Vorath Station was the kind of place where everyone was selling something. It sat at the edge of 3 trade routes, a spinning metal city in deep space, loud and crowded and full of creatures who had come from 100 different worlds to do business. Ships docked and left every hour. Credits changed hands in back rooms. Deals were made over drinks that smelled like engine fuel. Cole Hargrove did not like the station much. He was a tall man, broad in the shoulders, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many bad situations to be easily surprised. He had spent 12 years in the United States Marine Corps before leaving Earth behind. Now he ran the Iron Pact, a mercenary unit of 200 human soldiers, every one of them a veteran, every one of them someone who had learned the hard way that the galaxy was not a friendly place. The Iron Pact had a reputation. Not just for being good fighters, though they were. Their real reputation was simpler and rarer. They kept their word. Every contract they signed, they completed. Every man and woman in the unit came home. In a galaxy full of hired soldiers who cut deals, switched sides, and disappeared when things got difficult, the Iron Pact was different. People knew it. That was why the Dravari came to them. The Dravari were an insectoid species, tall and thin, with hard shells the color of dark wood and eyes that did not blink. They controlled 12 star systems and called themselves an empire, which Cole thought was a generous description for what was really just a collection of planets held together by fear and taxes. Their envoy arrived at Vorath Station in a clean ship with a clean suit and a very polished offer. The job was straightforward on paper. There was a colony world at the edge of Dravari space called Keth Soren. A group of locals had been causing trouble, refusing to follow orders, blocking supply routes. The Empire wanted the Iron Pact to go in first, capture key buildings and infrastructure points, hold them until regular Dravari forces arrived to take over. The whole operation would take no more than 2 weeks. The payment was 6 million galactic credits. 3 million up front, 3 million when the job was done. Cole listened to all of it without saying much. When the envoy finished talking, Cole asked for the full contract documents and told him to come back the next morning. That night, Cole sat with Dana Cross at a small table in their rented quarters while she went through every line of the contract. Dana was Cole's second-in-command, 10 years younger than him, with short dark hair and a habit of reading things twice before she trusted them. She was the best person Cole knew at finding the thing that was wrong before it became a problem. She found 3 things. 2 were small, just vague language that could be twisted later. 1 was bigger. A clause buried near the end that said the Dravari had the right to define the scope of the operation after deployment if conditions changed. Dana put her finger on it and looked at Cole without saying anything. Cole had it removed from the contract the next morning. The envoy pushed back. Cole shrugged and said they could find someone else. The envoy agreed to remove the clause. 2 more small changes were made. Then both sides signed. The Iron Pact prepared to move out. The soldiers checked their equipment, loaded their gear onto transport ships, and ran through their assignments. Most of them had done this dozens of times. There was no fear, just the quiet focus of people who knew their job. Cole stood at the loading dock and watched his people work. Len Bauer, one of his best squad leaders, came to stand beside him. Len was a quiet, careful man who never said more than he needed to. He looked at the signed contract in Cole's hand and said that it seemed like a clean deal. Cole folded the papers and put them in his coat pocket. He said that most deals looked clean before you got there. The ships lifted off the next morning. Keth Soren was 4 days away. No one on board knew yet what was waiting for them. But Cole had a feeling, the same low feeling he always got before something went sideways, and he spent the 4 days making sure his people were ready for more than what the contract described. Keth Soren looked like trouble from the moment they broke through the clouds. Cole stood at the front viewport of the lead transport and watched the land below. It was a dry, flat world, brown and yellow, with long stretches of farmland and small factory towns spread across the plains. Nothing about it looked like a war zone. That was the first sign something was wrong. The briefing had described armed insurgents, organized resistance, blocked roads, and damaged infrastructure. But as the transports descended toward the designated landing zone, the sensors showed nothing. No weapon signatures. No fortified positions. No vehicles moving to intercept. Just a quiet colony going about its day. Cole ordered the unit to land, but told everyone to stay sharp and keep their weapons holstered. The picture got clearer fast. Local people came out to watch the ships land, and they were not fighters. They were farmers and factory workers, men and women with dirty hands and tired faces, some of them holding children. A group of them had been standing near the main road with hand-painted signs protesting a new food tax the Empire had recently doubled without warning. That was the resistance. That was what the Dravery had sent the Iron Pact to pacify. Cole stood very still for a long moment. Then he turned to Dana and told her to get the Dravery envoy on the line. The call took 20 minutes to connect. When the Dravery commander finally appeared on screen, Cole asked him directly what the situation on the ground actually was, because it did not match anything in the briefing. The commander was unmoved. He said that the contract specified pacification of unauthorized resistance, and that the Empire had the authority to determine what resistance meant. The people on the ground were breaking imperial law by gathering in protest. The Iron Pact had a job to do. Cole said they would not be moving against civilians. The commander told him that if the Iron Pact refused to carry out the contract, the second payment would be forfeited and the unit would be in violation of their agreement. Cole cut the connection. He pulled his unit back to the landing zone and set up a defensive camp while he thought things through. He was not panicking. He was thinking. There was a difference, and it was a difference that had kept him alive through a lot of bad situations. He did not yet know that while he was on that call, Colonel Vetheron, the senior Dravery military officer on Keth Soren, had quietly ordered Imperial ground forces to begin moving around the perimeter of the Iron Pact camp. By the time Cole sensors picked up the movement 2 hours later, there were armored vehicles on 3 sides. Then the communications lock hit. The Iron Pact's extraction shuttles, parked at the landing zone, received automated notices from Dravery Orbital Control claiming an airspace protocol violation. All departures were suspended pending review. The review, according to the notice, could take up to 30 days. 20 minutes after that, the unit's financial account sent an alert. The first payment of 3 million credits had been flagged for review by Dravery financial authorities on suspicion of contract irregularities. The funds were frozen. Dana walked into Cole's tent and set a tablet on the table in front of him. On it was a broadcast that had just gone out to the major mercenary networks across the sector. It named the Iron Pact. It said the unit had deployed to Keth Soren and attacked civilian settlements without authorization, killing unarmed colonists. It included fabricated incident reports with dates and locations. Cole read it twice. His expression did not change much, but Dana had worked with him long enough to know what the stillness meant. Len Bauer was standing near the tent entrance. He said it plainly. The Empire had used them to get boots on the ground, then locked them in, froze their money, and put out a story to destroy their name before they could report what actually happened. If the Iron Pact went quiet or tried to leave quietly, the story would stick. Cole looked at his 2 squad leaders. He looked at the tablet. He looked at the map showing the Dravery perimeter closing in. He said they were not going quiet. He said it the same way he had said everything else, without raising his voice, without any drama. Just a statement of fact from a man who had already started working out what came next. Outside the tent, the sun was going down over Keth Soren. The Dravery thought they had the Iron Pact cornered. They did not yet understand what that actually meant. Most species, when surrounded and cut off and framed for crimes they did not commit, would do one of 2 things. They would either fight their way out badly and lose, or they would go still and wait for someone to rescue them. The Dravery had seen both responses before. They were comfortable with both. They had never dealt with humans before. Cole did not sleep much that night. He sat with Dana and Len Bauer and a squad leader named Val Osei and worked through everything they knew. Val was a quiet woman who did not talk unless she had something worth saying, but when she spoke, people listened. She had spent the first evening on Keth Soren walking the perimeter and reading the supply markings on every Dravery vehicle she could see from the fence line. She told them what she had found. Every armored unit the Empire had on the planet was running fuel from a single mobile depot stationed 6 kilometers south, near an old mining access road. It was not well guarded. The Dravery had not expected to need it guarded. They did not think anyone knew where it was. Val set the depot map on the table and tapped it twice. She said that without fuel, their armor could not move. Cole nodded. He looked at Len next. Len had already been thinking about the tunnels. Keth Soren had been a mining colony before it became a farming colony, and the old tunnel networks ran for kilometers under the plains. Most of them were still intact. The Dravery patrols were watching the surface roads and the open ground between the camp and the perimeter. They were not watching underground. Cole split the unit into 4 cells before dawn. Each cell had its own commander, its own communications, and its own orders. If one cell was captured or cut off, the other 3 would keep operating. He did not believe in putting all his eggs in one basket, especially when someone had already tried to steal the basket. Dana took the communications cell. Her job was the most important one in Cole's mind, because a fight without witnesses was just a crime. She set up 3 separate broadcast arrays using parts from the transport ships and began transmitting the full original contract, the timeline of events, the fabricated charges, and the Dravery's own communications logs, which the Iron Pact had quietly copied before the lockdown. She sent it to every neutral news relay in the sector. She sent it to the Galactic Arbitration Council. She sent it to the Mercenary Guild registries on 11 different worlds. It took her 4 hours to get all the arrays running. By the time she was done, the story that was out there about the Iron Pact attacking civilians had a lot of company from a much more detailed and documented counterstory. Len took his team underground before first light. They moved through the old mining tunnels with small lights and handheld maps, quiet and steady, and came up behind the Dravery communication relay stations on the north and west sides of the perimeter. They cut both relays cleanly, no explosions, no noise, just a clean disconnection that the Dravery operators would not even notice for 30 minutes. Val led the 3rd cell to the fuel depot. They moved across open ground before sunrise, using the low terrain for cover, and reached the depot while the single guard unit there was changing shifts. Val's team disabled the fuel systems in 11 minutes. No shots fired. The depot was not destroyed. It was simply turned off in a way that would take a specialist several hours to reverse. The 4th cell, led by a steady-handed soldier named Ray Cobb, had the most specific job. They had tracked Colonel Vetheron's command vehicle from the moment it arrived at the perimeter. Ray's team intercepted it on a back road at 4 in the morning. The colonel was unhurt. He was, however, no longer in command of his own movement. By the time the sun came up over Keth Soren, the Dravery ground forces had no fuel for their armor, patchy communications, and a missing colonel. The orbital command was asking questions that nobody below could answer clearly. And the Iron Pact had not fired a single shot at any of it. Cole stood outside his tent and drank cold coffee and watched the morning come in. Somewhere out in the colony, a rooster was making noise. It was, he thought, a very ordinary sound for a very strange situation. Len came back through the tunnel entrance covered in dust and reported that both relays were down. He asked Cole how they were doing. Cole told him they were doing fine. Then he said it was time to make a phone call. Colonel Vetheron sat in a small room inside the Iron Pact camp and said nothing for the first hour. He was not harmed. He had been given water and a clean seat and enough space to sit comfortably. Ray Cobb had left 2 soldiers with him, both of them polite and quiet. The colonel had expected hostility. The calmness unnerved him more. Cole came in after the hour was up, sat down across from him, and put a tablet on the table between them. On it were the original contract, the Dravery communications ordering the perimeter lockdown, the frozen payment notice, and the fabricated broadcast sent to the mercenary networks. Cole did not say anything. He let the colonel read. When Vetheron looked up, Cole told him that he was going to open a direct channel to the Dravery High Council in about 10 minutes. He told him that the colonel was welcome to sit in on the call if he wished. He said it the same way someone might offer a guest a chair at a dinner table. The call connected after a long delay. 3 members of the High Council appeared on screen, their dark shells gleaming under the light of some distant chamber on the Dravery home world. They looked at Cole. They looked at the colonel sitting in the corner. They said nothing. Cole spoke first. He was not angry. He was not threatening. He laid out 5 things, one after the other, in plain language. First, the full payment of 6 million credits, plus interest, to be transferred within 48 hours. Second, the frozen funds from the first payment to be released immediately. Third, a formal written retraction of the false broadcast sent to the mercenary networks, transmitted to every platform that received the original. Fourth, safe and unobstructed extraction for all Iron Pact personnel and equipment. Fifth, a formal acknowledgement of contract breach submitted to the Galactic Arbitration Council, signed by no fewer than 3 members of the High Council. He paused. Then he said what would happen if the demands were not met within 48 hours. Colonel Vetheran would be transferred to the Galactic Arbitration Council as a material witness and would testify about everything he had ordered on Keth Soren. The full documentation package that Dana's team had already broadcast would be handed personally to every major press organization in the sector. The Iron Pact would file for damages under interstellar contract law. Given the Dravery Empire's wealth and the scale of the fraud involved, the legal damages alone would be larger than the original contract by a factor of 10. Cole folded his hands on the table. He said he hoped the council would make the sensible decision. The screen went dark. The call had ended. Len came to stand beside Cole after the council disconnected. He asked what Cole thought they would do. Cole said he thought they would argue for a while. He was right. Inside the Dravery High Council, there were 3 factions debating the situation. One faction wanted to send an orbital strike and erase the problem entirely. A second faction said that the documentation was already out in the open and that destroying the Iron Pact now would confirm everything they had broadcast. A third faction pointed out that the Empire's ability to hire future contractors would collapse entirely if it became known that the Dravery killed mercenaries who refused an unlawful order. The argument lasted most of a day. Cole waited. He did not attack the Dravery perimeter. He did not make any further moves against their forces. He had made his position clear. Now he let the pressure do its work. At 30 hours, the frozen funds were released. A short notice arrived with them from Dravery financial authorities citing a processing error. Dana read it and made a face. At 36 hours, a new broadcast went out over the same networks that had carried the false story. It was a formal retraction, dry and minimal, but it was there. Dana printed it out and stuck it on the wall of the communications tent. At 43 hours, a Dravery shuttle landed at the camp perimeter. An official stepped out carrying a sealed document. It was the formal acknowledgement of contract breach, signed by 3 High Council members, addressed to the Galactic Arbitration Council. Cole read it standing outside in the afternoon heat. He folded it, put it in his coat with the original contract, and told Ray Cobb to make sure Vetheran had everything he needed for the ride to the shuttle. The colonel was released unharmed, with a full copy of the documented record in his possession. It was not a kindness, exactly. It was a message. The Iron Pact had nothing to hide and never had. The perimeter vehicles began pulling back before the sun went down. The Iron Pact loaded up in the early morning, when the sky over Keth Soren was still dark blue and the first birds were starting to make noise in the dry fields. Cole walked the camp one time before they left, the way he always did, checking faces and making sure everyone was accounted for. 200 soldiers. Every one of them present. Every one of them ready to go. The extraction shuttles lifted off without any trouble from Dravery orbital control. There were no flags, no delays, no new notices about airspace protocols. The way out was clear, the same way it had always been supposed to be. Down below, near the edge of the colony's main road, a group of local people had come out to watch the human ships rise. They were the same farmers and workers who had been out with their signs a few days before. Some of them waved. A few of them cheered. Cole saw them through the viewport as the shuttle climbed and lifted one hand briefly before the clouds took the view away. He did not know their names. He did not know if his unit had made their lives better or just less immediately dangerous. But they were alive and unharmed, and that felt like something worth noting. Back on Vorath Station, the story spread faster than any of them expected. Dana had done her job well. The documentation was clean, detailed, and impossible to misread. News organizations ran it. Mercenary guilds circulated it through their internal registries. 3 other contracting units came forward within a week, saying the Dravery had cheated them on previous jobs in smaller ways they had not bothered to report because the amounts were not large enough to fight over. Now they reported them. The Galactic Arbitration Council opened a formal review. The review ran for 60 days. At the end of it, the Council issued a financial penalty against the Dravery Empire and placed them on a watched contractor registry, meaning any future agreements with outside parties would require Council oversight for 5 years. It was not the largest penalty in the Council's history. But it was public, it was specific, and it named names. Cole did not attend the hearing. He sent Dana instead, with the full documents and a written statement. He had a unit to run. When Dana came back, she found Cole and Len sitting in a small place near the station docks, eating something that was probably food, drinking something that was definitely not water. She sat down and told Cole she had been promoted in his written statement. He had listed her as a field commander and given her a commendation for the communications work on Keth Soren. Cole said she had earned it. Len said Cole had owed him a drink since a job 2 years back in the outer sectors and asked if tonight was finally the night. Cole said it was. 2 weeks later, the Iron Pact signed a new contract. It was with a small trading consortium, 7 worlds working together to protect their shipping lanes from piracy. They were nervous clients who read every line of the contract 3 times and asked a lot of careful questions before signing. Cole answered all of them without rushing. He liked clients who paid attention to the details. They tended to honor the deal. The work was straightforward and well paid, and everything went the way it was supposed to go. Far away in Dravery space, the events on Keth Soren had quietly entered the military briefing documents used to train new commanders. The language was careful and official, but the meaning was simple enough. It said that human mercenary units operating under formal contracts had demonstrated an unusual response to containment and contract violation. It said that the standard assumption of compliance under pressure did not apply. It said that when humans were backed into a corner, they did not become easier to manage. They became harder. One senior Dravery instructor added a note to his copy of the briefing. It was short and did not need much explanation. It said that humans had a phrase for this, something they had carried with them since long before they reached the stars. He did not have an exact translation. The closest he could get was, "The more you take from them, the more dangerous they become." He underlined it twice and told his students to remember it. None of them forgot.